everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube, or welcome back if this is your 8th Nancy Drew Season 3 episode review. Hope you're all doing well. Wait, episode 8? Or I think we're on episode 8, yeah. Jesus Christ, Nancy Drew's just blowing through these episodes like nothing. I mean, I could be wrong. It may not be episode 8. Whatever episode number this is, I apologize. Because the thing is that this is probably the most delayed episode review we've done for Nancy Drew, sadly. Being honest here, I had to do something on Friday, so I was unable to record it live. Saturday, I was planning on trying to squeeze it in before I had another thing to do, and then I couldn't make it in, and then I've been waiting all day for something else. So tonight, we're finally recording it. So I apologize if this is not the best episode review in the world for Nancy Drew, as well as like very delayed. It's going out as soon as it's finished editing. No sort of awation there. But this week on Nancy Drew is probably the most... I think this show is starting to get a little bit on the rails and starting to borderline like sitcom elements with its usual storytelling, if that makes any sort of sense. But I don't think this is I don't believe this is the best episode of Nancy Drew. It's definitely not the worst. It's definitely kind of like a lower tier one in my opinion, because of course, honestly, the rememberability of this episode is very piss poor, since it could just be me having had a lot of things to do between when I watched it to when I'm now recording it. But normally when you watch an episode, it's still fresh in your mind. You still like remember most of it, and of course, obviously, everyone knows my brain is pretty horrible right now. So, me just thinking about that, just in general, it's gonna be a bother for me to go for the Butcher recap, since I really am gonna struggle to remember point by point everything that happened. But this was just an amusing episode in my opinion. This definitely kind of set the stage up for a cliffhanger for us to when we do come back after the Thanksgiving break, and when we come back in December. It's going to be interesting to see how they're going to kind of wrap up certain things. As we kind of take a sidestep from the whole... we took a sidestep from like one of the mysteries to like one of the things that honestly I was expecting them to just leave that alone until like, you know, just like once Nancy Drew eventually hits like a later higher season, they'll remember it. But no, they're remembering it now, so I'm like, okay, cool, get it out of the way when it's fresh in people's minds, and you know, that's the smarter plan here. But this is amusing. Okay, I apologize. I have not yawned on an episode review in such a long time, and I slept a good 8 hours last night, so I'm not really sure why I'm even tired. So let's go for the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Nancy Drew. I might watch Despicable Me afterwards. I don't know. So we begin with our... Oh, I forgot how we exactly begin. That's another problem. I want to say we pick up... Yeah. So I think Nancy and... are they back underground? No. That's not it. That's not it. Oh, I was spending so long time like remembering how did we end this episode, and then now I'm struggling. How did we begin this episode? Oh God, I want to say I'm aware it is the next day. I'm aware of that. So a little bit of time has passed between, you know, the major thing of Ace breaking up with Amanda. He doesn't really get to talk about that much about that this week. But I do remember Ace and George. I believe Nancy and George are downstairs in the caverns trying to find any sort of clue pertaining to the Ice Heart Killer, but it's sidetracked since now that Amanda's dad has been arrested, and they have a possible lead on trying to separate George and Odette from the same body, so that George can have a little bit more of her life back instead of the 10-year, around the decade left of her life that she does have. She wants to take it, as well as typically this is like just, it seems like every episode George and Nick has some sort of new conflict, and then they resolve it by the end, or they resolve by the next episode, which makes them a stronger couple, because George does not want to tell Nick about this until, and she does have a fair point. She said she doesn't want to give Nick false hope that this could potentially extend their relationship by a few more years, maybe even more, maybe the whole lifetime. It is something that she wants him to be happy about, but she wants him to know once it happens, so that he doesn't have to worry about it. But They're still awaiting the for the thing to open up, since Amanda did give in the key for everyone to use the storage unit. But of course, obviously, he's currently the suspect in the investigation. So the police might come in and like maybe accidentally take it, so they need to get to it as soon as they can. So Nancy calls in her two dads, the Mr. Drew and Ryan, to kind of come in and try and figure things out and try to fix it. It does. They managed to temporarily block the search of the storage unit until a later date, which works out for them. And of course, obviously, we know that Mr. Drew does have kind of a little thing for the DA, and maybe she does for him. I'm not really sure. But he's Mr. Drew not really thinking about that right now. But it also does kind of hurt his chances to eventually do get her if he does have any interest in her. But because Nancy's kind of like a high profile person now, kind of working in association with the police department, she can't go in there and tamper things up, as well as it could disrupt the chain of custody, all that stuff. So Ryan and Nick are heading in to kind of figure things out and find this mystical bootleg device on their own. I never thought I would say that sentence in my life. Meanwhile, at the youth center, turns out Bess is still trying to explore her romantic thing. It seems like the thing she had with the curator, I believe, isn't going to happen 100%, since, sad to say, she's kind of involved in this business with the what was I going to say, with the Frozen Hearts killer, the real supernatural one. And she's quite taking a liking to Nick's newest co-worker. Well, his worker, not co-worker. He's the boss. And Bess does everything for her, and she wants to go on a date with her. Maybe have some dinner, maybe have some fun. You don't really know, and it's a little bit of awkwardness between them, since like this has been a bit of a whirlwind, because Bess, working with Nancy and helping her out, like her freedom and her availability have become very subjected to cancellation. But Bess is like, don't worry, I have nothing to do tonight. Don't worry. George gives the call, and we need to do the ritual tonight. Poor ass timing, George. You're the one getting married here. Bess is trying to look for something, but okay, whatever. Bess does agree, since she thinks that maybe they can maybe expedite this process and maybe try to get this done quickly so she can go on her date. Meanwhile, Mr. Drew and Ryan have located the thing, but Ryan stupidly drops a chemical or a gas in the air that causes them to kind of act like teenagers again. And they quickly go from okay, we're gonna go home, we're gonna deliver this to Nancy so that they can go save George, and then they start to become teenagers, and they decide, fuck it, we're taking the car that's inside the storage unit, which I'm like, that is not your brightest idea, you two. Like, I know you're under the influence of this mystical powder, but like, still, don't. But too late. They drive off with the cylinders, and everyone except Nick are kind of awaiting at the Drew house to perform the ritual. But since they're still delayed, Bess is kind of getting all the preliminary stuff out of the way for the ritual to actually work, or their best chance for it to work. Making this very weird drink concoction, which I swear to God, this after last night, I don't even want to think about a drink for at least a couple of days. I'm just being honest with you. So I'm gonna pass over through there. But some time does pass. They have not showed up yet. Ryan does show up at the claw with Nancy and Ace being there already, and they kind of question like, "What's up? What are you doing?" And they kind of get the clue that Ryan has kind of regressed to a high schooler age again, and he and Mr. Drew kind of had like this little like rock and roll jam session, which I'm like 3 seasons in, and I'm like, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world to do. I just felt like this was kind of a little bit cringe, in my opinion. And I'm just like, why would you even consider doing that? It's weird. But of course, Nancy asks, "Where's my dad? Where's Mr. Drew?" And Ryan's like, "Well, he's over at the DA's house to go ask her out because he's got a thing for her." And Mr. Drew does get there. And he's struggling to find the words to ask her to tell her how he feels really. Nancy comes in, and I swear to God, this is on Kennedy McNitt. I can't pronounce her name. I apologize. The Nancy Drew's actress best performance ever, because like the way she's his dad, I'm like, I completely am sold by this. Like just the embarrassment, the worriness, the utter shame of it. This delivery was just so perfect, and um, it was just so funny. And the way Mr. Drew said, "Ah, drats! Oh, these old school high schoolers never go back to school, never." So they get back in the car, and so apparently they lost the cylinder at some point. They lost it. And they're like, fuck, now we gotta retrace our entire steps to go find the device, because obviously put them in the wrong hands and it's not gonna end so well. And of course Bess is kind of like in the vast unknowns of everything, considering the fact that turns out her thing with her date tonight isn't gonna happen after all, which does kind of bum her out a little bit. And then also in George's case, George cares about her life more than Bess. We're being fair there, and it kind of sucked for Bess to kind of be put in the back ringer there. But sad to say, that is just how it goes, and how it's going to be. So she makes the call, and I feel in the voice in the girl, like, yeah, she's bummed that Bess said no, and she would prefer for Bess to kind of like, give up what she was doing for her, and that's just not going to happen. It really isn't. Bess is kind of like very divided, because she's trying to act like she doesn't care, but at the same time she does care. So it kind of does suck in that regard, in my opinion. I do know, like, one Bess is kind of like getting preparations kind of finalized. George collapses on the floor. It turns out she's there's this concoction apparently had a very time sensitive approach, so they were supposed to have the device ready to go, which of course they didn't. So if anything, as I look a little bit different, the lighting's a little bit different, because I'm actually recording this in 2 different time periods. So I recognized halfway through recording the episode review that I remembered the crucial fact that I did not finish the episode. When I started the review, I did not. I thought I did, but now I remember, no, I actually did not have enough time to do prep for me to go out last night, as well as I did not finish the episode. I couldn't do both, and I couldn't be late, so I ended up just going out and then hopefully to finish it today, and I didn't until I realized halfway through recording, like, oh, I forgot. So yeah. So anyway, I've now watched the second half of Nancy Drew, and now I will get my full thoughts at the end of this. So we're gonna resume the butchered recap, which is now like, oh my god, this was like the splintered in half recap. So the first thing I remember is like, this was kind of like Nick's only role in the episode, since he's kind of being left out of the loop by everyone, since George is kind of front and center this week. He's mostly at the youth center helping out the worker that Bess likes a lot, and he goes along the lines of, they're just catching, they're not catching, they're talking, it's not really like a boss worker relation. They're like equal members of the community. So she asks him, like, where'd you come from? What's your story? And he basically gives a very abridged story of his life from the first 2 seasons, and that's kind of where he's ending up right now. And he's not quite sure what part of the story made him change to the man he is today. Could be the money, could be George, could be whatever. But he's in a happy place, and that's kind of where they leave it off for that moment for Nick. At some point after they head over to they're retracing their steps, and they head over to this barn house, and they manage to find the splitter. So Nancy decides to head back and rushes back to her house so that they can perform the exorcism, while Ace is kind of stuck on babysitting duty. But young Mr. Drew and young old Ryan's just like a couple of bachelors in the town, still like doing some weird messed up shit. But it turns out halfway through, Mr. Drew's got to show up to court, since before he got transformed to a teenager, he has to show up for an injunction or status case. I really don't know what it was, but he has to go in there, and since he's currently not lawyered up, it's gonna be a little bit difficult. But Ace is like, well, if he doesn't show up, it could break the chain of command. He could be disbarred. So at least he has to show up and, half-ass it a little and figure that out. So they head over, they suit him up, and it's clear as day, teenage Mr. Drew cannot be a lawyer for shit. He's just not. Eventually, Ace decides to try and send Ryan in so that he can maybe just kind of fake his way through, which kind of somehow it somehow works. I really can't explain it. And slowly but surely, they do start coming back to the world of adulthood. Thankfully, Nancy rushes back to the she rushes back to the to George and Beth's back in her house, and they perform the ritual, and it seems to be going well. So they they remove both souls, and then they split the two souls into two pieces. Although I'm still confused how the hell Bess knew, like, okay, this is Odette and this is George. I really don't know, but they split up the crystal, and they're beginning the process to put it back into George, just the George part itself. But when they're doing so, briefly George does come back. But then I thought for a second, okay, it's gonna be a trick. She's gonna fuck up. He's gonna be Odette, and then Odette's gonna be stuck with us for a while. No, it is George, but she immediately faints back into unconsciousness. So from that point, it kind of really does paint the picture that, yeah, so there's something wrong here. They fucked it up somehow, and they really can't figure it out. So Nancy heads back out to the caves, trying to find any sort of notes on the subject, maybe give them some sort of clue, like where did they go wrong? Did the pre-ritual fuck up? Was it the contraption itself? What's going on here? And they do clarify once again that, like, the device was only meant to split one soul into multiple pieces. It was never meant to kind of take two souls apart and then put it back to each other. So the prevailing theory is, in order for George's soul to fully go back in her body and stay there, they have to destroy the other piece of the stone. Because I believe, I don't know how it's explained, but they basically have to kill Odette, which Bess is not ready to do, since there's still a part of Bess that still loves her. She's still waiting for, like, maybe one day she can come back and they can again, I'm still very much confused. What did Bess and Odette see in each other? Since, you know, I don't really know. I still am confused about that. Like, and I watched season 2, so I'm like, I really don't know what the hell is up with that. I really don't know. But she can't do it, so she runs off with the other part of the crystal. While George is just lying there unconscious with a freaking stone machine, and hope to God no one like Temper shows up and fucks it up. I do believe Nancy does head back over to the house, you know, checking in, trying to find Bess, and she doesn't find her. And then she heads over to like a little stand, and that she's sitting in holding the Odette gem. And, you know, Bess is kind of at a crossroads right now in her life, because obviously she's been through so much, and right now I feel like she wants to have a stable relationship with someone, and she feels like Odette's her best bet, but she's not quite ready to fully say goodbye to her just quite yet. And while it sucks, George is their friend. Like, you know, Bess, technically this wouldn't have happened had Nancy not interfered with certain things, and also had Nancy not used the Shroud of Resurrection, none of this would have happened. Odette would have had a proper transition to the afterlife and lived out the rest of her spiritual life there, but they made the call, and then, you know, she was stuck here. And it sucks. It really does suck. But right now, George is more important. And Bess has to accept letting go finally. And, you know, I will say this. That scene where, like, you know, they're finishing the transfer process, I can really feel in Bess's eyes, like, despite me not understanding why she would, like, really fall for her that hard, Bess cries, like, it was a hard thing for her to do. I can feel it in her head and in her mind that, like, this is not something she wanted to do, and that all she wants to do right now is just keep her and hope to God some point down later on in the series they find a way to bring her back, but they can't. And it sucks to say, but, you know, they do what they have to do, and they break the crystal, and George manages to go through back to it, and it works. So Bess is outside. She's currently just waiting around and just, you know, pondering what she did. And then thankfully the girl from earlier shows up, and it seems like Bess is a little bit more, like, very basically says, look, I had a thing for someone else, but I'm fully done with that. She's never coming back. I want to take you on a second date. I want to have an actual conversation with you. I want to get to know you. Because it seemed like this is something that, like, Bess could see a potential relationship working in. Which, again, I'm very surprised Horseshoe Bay has a specific app for dating. So I'm like, okay. So it seems like they're going to hit it off. And they will go out to dinner at some point. They return back to the house. George is fully awake. And they hug and embrace that, like, you know, everything's over. Everything's done. I know there's something... Ace does make a call to someone. I'm not sure if it's Amanda or I'm pretty sure it is Amanda. I'm going to assume. I could be wrong, though. I I know he's back in the he's back. I think he's back in the youth center with Mr. Drew and Ryan, and they're kind of like coming back into terms with like their adult and like kind of regretting like what the fuck did we do while we were like out of it. And Mr. Drew decides to head back out to the DA's house to kind of apologize to her and for his behavior and try to his damn best to kind of explain his way out of it, since he's gonna have to keep working with her from now on. So he does so. He heads out there and he confesses, not a full like romantic confession, but like admits that like he has feelings for her, and he knows that this is a very difficult line to cross, since like they're both professionals, they both work together. So it's like if she doesn't see the same feelings for him, he's like totally fine with it. Like he could just return back to just being professional, and she admits like yeah, she has some feelings for him. So they do kiss and have a very romantic embrace that like this is the beginning for something new for them, for both of them. Ace is taking Ryan back home, and Ryan was debating like returning the guitar back to the storage center, but Ryan decides to keep it because when he was with Lucy, he made a promise to her that at some point he will learn how to play guitar. So it feels like this would be the best time that I need to start learning that, which is cool. Which I'm very that's very cool for him to do. And then we get to, I want to say, where do we go? So Nancy, Bess, and George are back together. They're just talking about like everything. Like it's over. Odette is finally gone. She's at peace, and she's able to live the rest of her hopefully happy afterlife in her own version of it. And George is now happy to like she can finally tell Nick, and they can start like not being on a time crunch anymore, and that sort of thing. So it's great for her. However, she calls Nick, but Ace picks up the phone, and it turns out that Nick left his phone there, but there is no sign of Nick or his truck. He just up and disappeared. Where'd he go? We don't know. But that's why this week's episode of Nancy Drew does end properly. Not when I had fun. But I think, honestly, yeah, now that I've seen the whole episode in full, some of my opinions early on are not valid, in my opinion. But I still think this was a very average episode of the show. I think the Mr. Drew and Ryan subplot was kind of like, it was funny. I get that. It's just kind of hard for me to see them exploring this. Like, this is a very mystery-like show, and this is a thing. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Maybe you want to break up the monotony a little bit before you get into the last winter episodes. So I kind of get that, but at the same time, it was a little bit like I didn't really need it at the end of the day. It was funny, but I didn't really need it. This whole George plot of trying to get Odette out of her, I do understand. Like, I really would have wished if, like, I know Bess and Odette had their final moment together in season 2's finale. I do get that. It would have been like one more like final gut punch of like she just somehow incorporated for like a brief second just to say goodbye to Bess, but it didn't happen. I'm not sure if that's just they didn't want to bring back the actress to Vancouver or bring her back to set, or maybe it would just ruin the story. I really don't know, but it would have been nice to see Odette one last time, but we didn't, but that's fine with me. But now I think Bess does give the strongest performance of the season, even though I don't really understand again how much this would work out between them, why they would even be considered to be that close, but they are, and I'll accept that. But again, this definitely closes fully one chapter for Bess, and then hopefully it's the start of another, but we'll see how that all goes on later on. And yeah, I mean, they're setting where did Nick go? We don't know, but it is nice for George to not have this Odette thing anymore. That's one less thing for her to worry about. Still thinking that red bucket thing is really going to come back to bite her in the ass at some point. How they're going to play that off, we'll see how that goes. Whatever next life-threatening crisis George is faced with next. But overall, with this week's episode, I thought it was okay. It was average. I think Bess's moment with Odette is probably the best part of it, and other than that, everything else is just subpar. So with that, I'm going to give this episode 1 1/4 thumbs up. I enjoyed it. I apologize for the way I edited and split this episode. I apologize. This was not meant to be. We'll be back to normal when we come back from the Thanksgiving break. Because if you're unaware, this has been What's in the Tube from ActionX, reviewing every episode in the 3rd season of Nancy Drew. If you want to know what we're doing normally, What's in the Tube, besides our Nancy Drew episode reviews, we are currently doing I have to think for a minute. Walker season 2 episode reviews each and every Friday mornings after a brand new episode on Thursday nights on the CW, free the next day on the CW app. We're also doing Doom Patrol Season 3 reviews each and every Saturday mornings after normally a brand new episode on Thursdays on HBO Max. But only care about Nancy Drew. We're on Thanksgiving break, so both Nancy Drew and Walker are on break. So we will be back in December. Same with the rookie as well. I forgot we also do rookie season 4 episode reviews as well. So we're kind of light this week coming out. We're kind of like all of our regularly scheduled shows are off the air for a couple weeks. So it'll be a while. However, this week we have a couple bonus videos to kind of keep you run over for us for the holidays. This Tuesday we'll be posting our Star Wars The Bad Batch season 1 review, technically quick impression. It's kind of weird. I'm still deciding what I'm going to label it, since it is in the feel of a quick impression, but at the same time it's not really reviewing multiple seasons, so you could classify it as a spoiler-free season 1 review. I'm still thinking about that. You'll find out on Tuesday. And then this Thursday, for your Thanksgiving treat, we are finally returning to the land of Doctor Who with our every Doctor Who series reviewed part 2. Me and George are back. We're reviewing the Matt Smith run of the show. That will be starting up this Thursday with Series 5, the review. I can't wait for it. I've been editing it for the past couple of days. It's really, really great. You're going to love it. It's going to be an amazing 5 weeks of content for you all to enjoy. So stay tuned for that. But again, for all you Nancy Drew fans, we'll see you all in December when we come back for the last 2 episodes of the year. But until then, once again, this is Ben What's the 2 from ActionX. Please subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring that bell for notification when our next episode review is live. Please also like, favorite, share this review if you want to. But it helps us gets us out there to other members of the Drew crew to discover us. Helps us beat up that YouTube algorithm that hates me ever so much in life. And as well as sharings for free here on the interwebs. Please also follow us on social media to stay up to date with any sort of updates for the channel. But until then, I'll see you all in December, everyone, for more Nancy Drew reviews. But until then, enjoy your Thanksgiving or enjoy your holidays. Enjoy your little time off with your friends and family. Have some turkey on me or some ham or whatever you want to eat during these next couple of weeks. I'm eating some hot pot this Friday, yellow. But until then, I'll see you all in December. But until then, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. And as always, peace out.